I'd like to gavel in our regularly scheduled meeting for January 7th, 2013. If you'd all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Here.
Alderwoman Manister.
Here.
Alderman Leahy.
Here.
Alderman Tooley.
Here.
Alderman Kramer. Alderman Robertson.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Harper.
Here.
Thank you. Approve of the agenda for the regular Board of Alderman meeting for January 7th, 2013. Motion, please.
I was wondering if on Bill 5723, we should just have the first reading of that regarding the promenade, since that's, a big change to that development, and the traffic's a big issue, and it garnered a lot of public attention immediately when it hit the patch. So I thought maybe staggered readings for that one.
I haven't had any phone calls.
I move that we just have the first reading.
Well, if you can get people to do it.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I just have a quick, isn't this just to look out into researching the idea? Like,
No, this is to approve the site plan so they can start their construction. Okay, so to have just the first reading on the agenda for this evening, roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Tooley.
yes.
Alderman Robertson.
No.
Alderman Nguyen.
No.
Alderman Harper.
No.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved, Your Honor.
And second?
I'll second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item, consideration and approval of the minutes from the December 17th meeting. Any changes to those
Yes.
minutes? Alderman Leahy?
Give me a second. I am on page 4 of the minutes, accounts against the city. Midway down in the paragraph, the line starts, originally the play was for a hybrid. I believe that is planned.
Okay.
Other than that, Your Honor, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Did you have any changes? No. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item, no public hearings this evening, no bids. Next item, item 7, hearing of any matter of public interest upon any person present. If anybody would like to address the Board of Aldermen, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Angie Holshoff. I live 8735 Rosalie Avenue. I received a notice of a code violation on December 21st regarding my chickens that I have had for 3 years. I immediately, that same day, called and left a message with Pat Kelly, but I didn't hear back due to, I'm sure, the holidays, because we were all so busy. So I called, I had called Pat before I got the chickens 3 years ago, and we spoke, and he was under the impression that the ordinance against them had been overturned and thought he had known of some people that had chickens. So I kind of left it at that after we had spoke, and went ahead and spoke to my neighbors, had a little coop made, and got my chickens. I have had them for 3 years without any problem. And let's see. Haven't had any problem with them. Knew nothing really of this this code that was, against the chickens until this all happened. I received this letter from David Pratchett. It's dated December 19th. I received it on the 21st, and it basically told me in order for me to be in compliance, I had to have my chickens gone on December 31st. and of course, Christmas, New Year's, and my husband having a hand surgery, and I have 2 small kids. There are pets, and I'm absolutely going to do everything I can to, hopefully fight for this ordinance to be changed. I did not have a whole lot of time to prepare much. I do have a 10-page handout with all the reasons why chickens should, be allowed. Probably the biggest thing being that they are allowed in Baldwin, Bayless, Clayton, Creve Coeur, Ellisville, Eureka, Fenton, Kirkwood, Ladue, Maplewood, Richmond Heights, Rock Hill, Shrewsbury, St. Louis City, St. Louis Unincorporated County, University City, Valley Park, and Webster Groves. So I just, a few little tidbits about them. I realize that this would be a process if this were to happen, and I'm not saying that, I want anything to happen immediately right now. I know we need to go through some steps, but, I just want to make it clear that I'm not suggesting that we have roosters. Hens are not loud. They cackle a little bit when they lay an egg in celebration. Sometimes the other girls would join in to celebrate with them. But it's quieter than a barking dog, and when that happens, it doesn't last very long. Besides that, the waste that they leave behind is nothing in comparison to a dog. And I use that to fertilize my organic garden, which is wonderful. People pay a lot of money for fertilizer like that, and I have it. And let's see. Yeah, they're not messy, they're not smelly, as long as you take care of their coops. And they eat all the bugs, or as many as they can, in my yard when they're scratching around, and keep the bugs out of my garden. And I let them free range when I let them out and I'm home, in the confines of my backyard. Other than that, they put themselves back in their coop in the early evening. They don't make a peep until the morning when they're up, and they just do their thing. So just to hear that there was a complaint against them is a little baffling to me, because you'd have to go into my backyard to see them to even really know they're there. I'm not sure how this goes, but that's that.
Thanks, Angie. I think what we're going to do is, and I had told you before the meeting that it is actually going to be something that Public Works is going to be talking about. I would entertain a motion from the board to rescind the violation notice until the issue is resolved, that way you'll be in compliance at least until we
So
get
moved.
a decision. In second.
I
Is there a
have-
second. Okay, second. Go ahead, Alderman Lady.
I have a problem with that, Your Honor, in the fact that we've had 2 other people approach the board in the last 3 years discussing the chicken issue. And I'm not so sure that we really want to set precedent to either put a moratorium on the code to work with when we have the other 2 people both wanted to bring chickens in to the area, and we told them because the code was there that they had to work the code through before we would allow this to happen. And Angie, nothing against what you're doing, especially if you and your neighbors have been able to work something arrangement, but the code is what everybody else is required to meet, to work with. And 8 years ago, when we had Rudy the Rooster up on Porter, that code, we discussed at that time about potentially looking at maybe rescinding it. We did not, and then Rudy did disappear.
Well, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that we get roosters. But I've had these chickens
Right.
for 3 years. They're our pets. I mean,
And again, we have a first and a second, and I think there was some confusion. I actually thought that they were okay, as well. And I think the fact that we're not, what I'm asking is just for this specific case, we're not encouraging other people to bring them in until this is resolved. This is the only ones that I'm aware of that Angie actually has them here in the city of Brentwood, and I think it would be appropriate to let her keep those until we have the issue resolved. So, Alderman Saunders.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I
Right.
mean, should I amend anyone that currently has them? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
We're not going to, and since we're obviously going to take this up, it would be silly to have you store the chickens
Okay.
somewhere
Yeah.
other neighborhood and then bring them back.
Alderwoman
Hi, I live
Manister.
right next door to Angie, and she's the best example of how to take care of backyard chickens that I've ever seen. And I think it would be unreasonable to ask her to get rid of them if we're going to talk about the possibility of overturning this. And if there's additional people in Brentwood, we'd like to let them know, people that would like to have backyard chickens, that, you know, come to the Public Works meeting, and we'd like to hear what they, you know.
Yeah, it
have to
might
say
actually be
to
an
support
opportunity
this.
for
Yeah.
members of the board to go and actually take a look at Angie's and see how it actually
Absolutely.
operates. So,
Anybody's welcome.
okay. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
No.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you.
Yeah, and she's going to hand out this, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Lee, I'm on Eulalie. Just a quick question. When was this ordinance, they used to have chickens in Brentwood when I was young. Of course, that was in the dark ages, but I don't, I didn't know, was an ordinance put in place in recent years?
I'd have to go back and look, I don't
Okay,
remember.
because
Yeah.
I know we had chickens, you know,
Mhm.
neighbors all had chickens and stuff when I was younger, so.
Yeah, and I really did, I thought we'd reverse it, and that, I thought there was a family over in Ward 1 that had chickens, but I must be mistaken.
Yeah, and I'm
so.
all for them. I think they're great. you know.
Okay.
Good for the environment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Martin. I'm a resident of Clayton, and I'm a backyard chicken keeper. And I just wanted to mention it's a very popular hobby at the moment, and many of the cities around you have adopted pro-chicken ordinances in Clayton, Kirkwood, Ladue, Richmond Heights, U City, and the St. Louis City. In Clayton, we faced this, and the discussion was taken over by, and I can't think of the acronym for, but it's our Green Initiatives Committee in Clayton, and they kind of got behind it and promoting this kind of hobby as part of the green slow food movement. And there might be a number of people here who would be love to share with you the experiences and offer to allay any sort of worries about chicken management, about waste control. I compost my chicken stuff, about siting houses, and about keeping it an attractive thing as part of the neighborhood. I think you already have in place, and Clayton kind of had this too, noise and odor ordinance, and usually that covers what people might worry about with chickens. Actually, in Clayton, you can keep roosters too, and I also have 2 roosters that sleep in the garage at night so that nobody can hear them. And I believe in, you're kind of covered already. You have actually in Article 1, Section 5-4, there's an ordinance against odor and noise. It's got prohibited within the city, but particularly it describes if you own a bull, a cow, chickens, geese, and donkeys, and it goes on and on. And another kind of a wonderful one is 5.7 that says if you do have cows and donkeys and hogs, you can't keep them in your house. So, and I thought that was it was pretty good. And what these other cities have done is look at sort of the old ordinances and try to get behind it. In Richmond Heights and Maplewood, the school districts have gotten behind it. And I teach at John Burroughs, and we have a kind of a green initiative going on at the school, and all this is sort of part of looking at that and helping to show children where food comes from, how you can raise it humanely, and not that we're eating. I don't eat my chickens, but we eat the eggs. But Maplewood Richmond Heights School District also got behind it with their seed to table program, which was remarkable in their elementary school. And anyway, it's a fun, popular hobby, and a lot of cities have embraced it. And I would invite anybody who would like to come and visit. There's probably a number of people here who have coops that we'd love to show you, and you could stick your nose in and smell and, and listen. Thank you. Oh, and I come with a little bit of perspective as a longtime resident of Clayton, and I'm also on several boards. So I saw it from both sides. I'm on the currently Board of Adjustment, but it was kind of nice seeing it from both sides, but they were able to actually embrace it and make it work. Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Doreen Olson, and I'm one of 4 co-owners of a Backyard Chickens Meetup group. When I joined, I think there were 41 members or so. There's now over 700. We offer regular coop education tours, which are a lot of fun. That's listed on the website. Ann Martin has a wonderful coop that's been on tour a number of times. We just all recently went through all of this in the city of Blackjack, which interestingly wasn't mentioned because we all just went through all this. So I'm not going to repeat a lot of ground here, but I just wanted to say my chickens are actually certified registered therapy animals. And I have 2 turkeys as well that are pet turkeys that go to schools and nursing homes and hospitals on occasion. They have to be careful with disease transmission, but there's a special chicken vet in the area. So it's not just some crazy coop keeping chickens. Shape up, Andy.
Thank you.
Doreen, good evening to you.
Hi, I'm Rachel Carvalho. I live at 8824 Bridgeport, and I was here last month about the chickens. So I'm glad we have more people out tonight to support the chicken movement. And I brought an old friend of mine that I've known almost 20 years, Joyce Stinger. She has chickens and roosters. She lives in Clayton also. She has beehives also, and I was just going to let her do some talking to maybe give you some ideas.
Hi, I'm Joyce Stinger, and
Joyce, could you give us your address, please? I'm sorry.
who to give these pieces of paper to, but these are newspaper articles, and
If you could just pass it, we'll start down here. We'll pass them down.
Exhibit A and this is Exhibit B. And what it's about is that,
I'm sorry, if you could come to the microphone and talk, because so we can pick it up on when you speak. We can't hear you with your. Thank you.
coming back.
All right.
What those are is just newspaper articles, and they're pretty old. But about, I guess in 2005, I went to help some people in University City get their chickens straightened out, and they did. And so it's a $25 inspection fee, and there's a limit, I think, of about 4 chickens. But I've had them for 26 years in Clayton, and I even have roosters. And my roosters stay in the garage at nighttime, and in the daytime they don't crow very much, just in the morning. So you can't even do it with roosters, but most of the municipalities do not allow roosters. So, and I haven't had any trouble. The rules in Clayton state that you can have, couldn't hear very well when people were talking, but they say you can have any kind of farm animal as long as it's not a disturbance to your neighbors. And when I asked Steve Askins many years ago about having chickens, he started rattling off donkeys and cows and horses and so forth and so on. And I said, stop before I do something really crazy. But the chickens were enough. So I hope you can. So do you have to change the ordinance?
We would, yes,
To
allow that, yes.
allow that to happen? Okay.
And we're reviewing that process. Thank you.
Joyce, did you get,
I can't hear very well, so
did you get involved with the St. Louis County Parks over here at Tilly's Parks when they had the rooster 2 years ago that got abandoned at their park?
no.
Okay, thank you.
But I accept chickens and roosters
Yeah.
when people have trouble. And somehow or other, I'm able to have the roosters. I've got about 6 roosters. Most of them are pretty quiet.
Thank you.
I got a question. Now, for you people, I don't know nothing about that. I remember as a kid we had them on the farm, but all the chickens get older and older. Do you take them for dinner eventually? Do you take them and let them die at the? What happens to them at the end of life?
They live their life out.
Okay.
In my coop, they're pets.
Does anybody cook them?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Well,
We
there's
buried
nothing
the
wrong.
first chicken that we lost and had a
You
memorial
you
service.
could do. You
Okay,
could,
I'm
you
sorry, we
could-
can't keep on a conversation that way, we can't pick it up, but
I know.
yeah.
You could go.
Right, they could, right. There could be another source of food, right, if somebody wanted. Yes, sir.
Right. My name is Guy Neary. I teach classes on backyard chickens at St. Louis Community College at all the campuses. I'm also the focus of the dilemma in Blackjack because my family's been raising chickens in Blackjack for over 100 years, and there was an article about me in the Post-Dispatch that said that I had chickens, and no one in Blackjack knew. And so they came unglued, and they immediately sent me in notice that I had to get rid of them by last June. They are now currently allowed, as are roosters in Blackjack. They're grandfathered in now because I told the board about my family's history in Blackjack and what we did, and it turns out even the mayor's next door neighbor had chickens, and he didn't know it. And my next door neighbor, after we all presented our cases, came to the board, and I have roosters. I've always had roosters. And my next door neighbor came to the board and said, if anybody should complain, it would be me, because I'm his closest neighbor. And I didn't know he had chickens until he told me he had chickens. And they crow maybe every day. Some days they don't crow. But I keep them locked up till about 8 o'clock in the morning, and nobody even hears them. I mean, I can be in the middle of the backyard, even with the roosters crowing, and the neighbor's lawnmower across the street is louder than my chickens. So down the road, for subsequent meetings, if you would like, I can come and present some other information that might be helpful to you. Because most of the city boards are concerned about noise. They're concerned about pests like rats, mice. They're concerned about property values. They're concerned about smells. So I can address all of those issues if you would like. I would be more than willing to come back at a future date.
That'd be great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Josephine Almer. I live in Fenton. We live in a fairly small community. We live on about 2/10 of an acre. We also have chickens. Currently, we have 4, but we've had as many as 18 on the property without complaints. Most of our neighbors don't realize that we have them, even though they can actually see them. 2/10 of an acre with a 4-foot fence, there's not a whole lot of privacy. We haven't had any complaints from our neighbors. We are currently going through something similar. Sorry, I get a little nervous.
You're doing fine.
We have been asked to get rid of our hens also. And so we started a petition in the community. And currently, we range between about 70 and 80% support for our chickens, even on 2/10 of an acre. We did a petition over the summer, and out of 30 homes that we approached, we had 1 abstain and 27 said yes. Something similar happened in Eureka, and it was an 11-to-1 vote in support of having chickens. I can also attest to property values. We have had our home assessed with and without chickens. It actually went up from 2008 to 2011. It actually went up by about $1,700 with the chickens on the property. I have statements from several. We've had 2 homes immediately adjacent to our house sell, and having chickens on the property actually helped. One of the homes was sold and then rented within a month. And in this economy, it's not real easy to do. So I hope that that helps, and thank you.
Thank you.
Karen Smith, I live on Harrison. I understand that the state auditor's report is going to be released sometime in January. And when they do that, they're going to bring it forward into a closed session. And I understand that that is the state auditor's request that it be done that way, but I would like to ask the board to consider requesting that that be done in open session in an effort for transparency, which I understand that is something that we are all striving for. I think that, given the circumstances, it would be nice if that could be done in an open session. Furthermore, the 3 things that qualify for going into closed session are personnel, legal, and real estate, and I don't think the state audit really falls into any one of those 3. The audit actually was a taxpayer resident-led initiative. It was paid for with taxpayer money, and so I think the taxpayers have the right to be able to hear the results of that audit at the same time that the Board of Aldermen are. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close public comment. And again, the issue with respect to the ordinance and the chickens is something that is going to be taken up by our Public Works Committee. And I appreciate everybody coming and giving us their information tonight. And I'm sure it will be helpful in their decision-making process. So,
Your Honor?
Yes.
Angie, if I may, the other person that approached the board was Lil Collins over on High School Drive. I want to say it's 2525 or 2528 High School. If we move forward on this, would you please get with her also? Yeah. She would like to bring chickens into the neighborhood. She does have beehives.
What was her
Yes.
address?
2525 or 2528 High School Drive.
Okay, now if we can have first reading of bill number 50, or a motion for the first and second readings, first reading of bill number 5722.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second.
Second.
For first reading only, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. First reading of bill number 5722.
First reading bill number 5722 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Brentwood, Missouri to enter into an amended agreement with Sullivan Publications, Inc. for the recodification of the Brentwood Municipal Code and providing for the effective dates of this ordinance.
Okay.
Your Honor, if we can correct.
Yes.
Under
Well,
point of order.
Yeah, that's fine. We can just make another motion. Do we have the synopsis?
Yes, we do.
Alderman Lay, would you like to read the synopsis?
All right. Bill 5722, the bill would authorize the mayor to enter into an addendum to the agreement with Sullivan Publication Incorporated for the recodification, ancillary services for the Board of Aldermen and various subunits of government of the Brentwood Municipal Code. The agreement includes a listing of the various services Sullivan Publication may provide to the city as we go through the process of adopting the new code. Primary on this list is the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings to review Title IV of the Municipal Code zoning. This item was approved by Ways and Means Committee.
Okay, thank you. Now, if I could have a motion for the second reading of bill number 5722.
So moved, Your Honor.
And second.
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any comment? This is so they can do help with our process as we go through it. They weren't contracted with that before, so okay. Do you have a motion, please?
Move for adoption, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I don't believe we've had the second reading.
Oh, I'm sorry, second reading first. No wonder I don't have a motion. Go ahead.
Second reading, Bill Number 5722 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Brentwood, Missouri to enter into an amended agreement with Sullivan Publications, Inc. for the recodification of the Brentwood Municipal Code and providing for the effective dates of this ordinance.
Okay. Alderman Leahy.
Motion to approve Bill 5722 into ordinance form.
And second. Motion was made by Alderman Leahy, second by Alderman Nguyen. Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Toohey.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Bill
Thank you.
number 5722 now becomes ordinance number 4397.
Okay. With respect to 5723, before we get to the first reading of that, I think, my opinion is I think the board is overreacting a little bit and not addressing this and addressing any issues that might be before us tonight before we make a decision to hold off on making a decision for another meeting. That'll be another month before we have another meeting that this could then be addressed. They're looking at, time frames and getting construction done for their new tenants, those kinds of things. You could deal with lease negotiations. And, again, we have the traffic reports, traffic study, and people here to address those questions. And so what I might ask is that we have the first reading, have the discussion, and then maybe if you would at that point entertain having the second reading at that point. Again, time is very important when they're doing things like this, especially trying to get things done so that they can get things built and then tenants in before the holiday seasons of next year, those kinds of things. So timing is very critical for these kinds of projects. So if, did we ask for a motion for the first reading of Bill number 5722? Okay.
Yes, we did.
Could we have first reading, please?
First reading, Bill Number 5723 by title only, an ordinance granting approval of a site development plan for a 20,000 square foot addition to a portion of the property numbered 1 Brentwood Promenade Court, which permits under the provisions of Chapter 25 of the Brentwood City Code the modification of that site, providing the conditions to such development, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance, and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay. Synopsis, please.
Bill number 5723. This bill is for an ordinance granting approval of a site development plan for a 20,000 square foot addition to a portion of the property numbered 1 Brentwood Promenade Court, which permits under the provision of Chapter 25 of the Brentwood City Code. The applicant, FRCH Design Worldwide, proposes to remove a 10,222 square foot end cap, which was the old Shane Company, and replace it with 20,000 square foot of new retail space for up to 3 tenants. There will be a related site improvement, including installation of a new sidewalk along the east side of the Eager Road entrance.
And again, I just so the public understands, it's actually not a 20,000 square foot addition. It's a 20,000 square foot building, but they're removing 10 and building 20, so it's a net increase of 10,000 square feet, not 20. And Ellen, I will turn it over to you.
As Alderman Leahy mentioned in the overview, the site development plan includes some site-related improvements. I think the most significant one is the addition of a sidewalk along the east side of the Eager Road signalized.
I'm sorry, it's not showing up on the screen. Sorry.
Along the east side of the Eagle Road signalized entrance. Currently, there's no sidewalk there. So I'm sure some of you have seen this in the shopping center where pedestrians either walk along the grass, where there's actually a sort of a path that's worn into the grass, or when there's snow, they walk in the drive aisle. This is primarily, I'm sure, people coming from the east, from the Metrolink station. This will provide an improved access for pedestrians to get into the center, and it includes the addition of a pedestrian walk connecting to the sidewalk on the east side of the shopping center. Another significant portion of the proposal is that the applicant asked for a reduction in the required parking to allow for a net loss of 8 parking spaces. The city's traffic engineer, CBB, reviewed the request and recommends approval of reducing the parking ratio for the center from 4 per 6 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area to 4.4 parking spaces per 1,000 feet of gross floor area. Lee Cannon with CBB is here to answer any questions about CBB's parking analysis. At its December 12, 2012 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the project. They started their review on November 14th. This went to subcommittee at the end of the month in November, and then they deliberated further in December and then made a recommendation at that time. They did not add any conditions of approval. However, during the meeting, they discussed one of the traffic engineer's recommendations, which was to have that an employee parking plan be put in place. The shopping center owner representative from DDR, David Budge, is here this evening, so he can also answer questions. But at the time, he did agree that this was something that would benefit the shopping center owner and property management and retailers as well. So earlier in January, staff met with Sansone Group, which is the property manager, and David Budge, and the planning and zoning chairman, to talk about an employee parking plan. This is a site plan that shows in blue and red where the proposed designated employee parking spaces are to be located. This was provided by the owner and Sansone. They also provided a letter. It was a December 19th, 2012 letter that basically included the following points. All employees will be required to park in designated employee parking spaces daily. The employee parking areas will be striped in yellow to contrast with the existing white parking lot striping. The property manager has committed to holding a meeting with each store manager or store representative to discuss and support this plan as a partnership between the retailers, owners, and management to promote business in the center. Store managers are to discuss the employee parking plan with their employees and post the plan in the store for ongoing enforcement. The property managers also agreed to visit the site at least one morning a week before opening, when she can actually view the location of employee parking. Currently, if you visit the site early in the morning, you can see the employees parked in front of Target or Trader Joe's. And she has included in the letter that she will do this at least once a week to help with enforcement of the of this employee parking plan. And also the property managers have agreed or committed to send letters on a quarterly basis to the store managers to reinforce the employee parking plan. This will help as managers change or employees change to kind of keep it an ongoing item in front of them. Now, as far as being enforceable, the parking plan could be enforceable if the Board of Aldermen included it, and I would recommend including the December 19th letter and the site plan accompanying it as a condition of approval to the ordinance. That way, not only the property manager, but also staff as well can enforce it, because it would then be an ordinance of the city. Just finally, really quick, I wanted to address Alderman Kramer's email from December. I guess it was December.
Yes.
He made two key points. One is that employees should be, there should be employee parking wording in leases. David Bunch, again, is here, so he could speak to this more specifically as the owner representative. However, he did mention at the Planning and Zoning Commission that there is currently wording in some of the tenant leases giving DDR the authority to require employee parking, and he can talk about how they would require it moving forward in new leases as well. He also, another point is that Alderman Kramer asked for certain dates and times of the year when they would have specific employee parking required. The employee parking plan proposed by Sansone and DDR actually would be for 365 days a year, all day. So it would actually be in excess of what Alderman Kramer asked for. His second key request is about restriping. The Planning and Zoning Commission did discuss this at length. Crawford Bunty Bremer, again, is as the city's engineer reviewed that request when P&Z discussed it, and they did not recommend restriping the full parking lot. It was not something that they felt was needed to mitigate this project, and also it would be an extremely costly project, possibly even, millions of dollars. So again, Lee Cannon is here to respond to that, as is the shopping center owner if there are any further questions. So that's it.
Thanks, Ellen. Does anybody have any questions from Ellen? Alderman Saunders?
We received this kind of in pieces. It was a part of the city administrative report and the minutes and that. Did we receive a copy, I'm sorry, of this particular, where the employee parking is? Did anyone else receive that? I don't have that.
I don't
And
know. I
also-
couldn't open up my city administrator's report last Friday, but.
But I got my hard
this-
copy, and I didn't have it in there. But I also, some of them were like the minutes were from the December 28th.
I think this is from Ellen's meeting when?
Well, it was the meeting that we had with, it was the end of December. And I know before last Friday it had not been, it indicated it hadn't been included.
Okay, and then also the terms, the employee, I know you had just spoke to them, but is that agreement? I don't believe I've seen that agreement either, that you are saying that we should adopt as part of the ordinance?
It's a letter that Sansone submitted dated December 19th.
I think that was in the packet, it
No,
wasn't? Okay.
I have
Okay.
I think I have. So that's part of the reason too with the staggering was that the minutes that we had were draft minutes from the December 12th planning and zoning meeting, and then I had asked about the auto turn study, which I just received tonight, and then again there's a couple pieces that we're just seeing as this evening.
But yeah, I mean, that's what we do here. So, I mean, again, I'm just saying because P&Z has reviewed it and really discussed a lot of the things that we're talking about, and that's why staff had further conversations with the developer with respect to the employee parking and those kinds of things, and they agreed to it and did it because they understand it's going to make the center better. And that's why it gets brought to us at that point and can then be added to, again, I would suggest, as Ellen did, that we add that letter to the ordinance and then make it enforceable not only by the management group but also by the city.
And there is another condition of approval that could be added, which is that no building permits would be issued until the employee parking plan is it is in a format that it's agreeable to staff. That way, if the Board of Aldermen wanted to review it further or had additional questions, that could be something that could be finalized, at a later point. But it would still be part of the ordinance, and then we would hold off on issuing building permits until the employee parking plan was finalized. That's just another option.
I mean, I think again.
Can we get a
if you can
copy of
see
the
that-
letter?
Yeah, I think Ellen can get you a copy of the letter. I mean, this
Right now?
pretty much states.
Oh. Or I mean, I could go distribute the copies if any copies tonight, or distribute them if you'd like.
Yeah, but the plan is pretty much, I mean, again, it's pretty straightforward if you look at the map. I mean, there's only a certain amount of places, as we discussed at the last meeting, where you can actually park.
The area shaded in red is the Target employee parking.
You can
It's
turn
kind
out
of-
that light again
you
and
turn
maybe
up the
point
first
to it, Ellen.
floor. The area shading in red on the north side of Target is the Target employee parking, and this is actually already in the adopting ordinance from when Target expanded back in 2007. So they're already required by our ordinance to park on the north side during daytime hours.
Right.
However, this employee parking plan takes it a step further. It would be all day in
And
24 hours,
Alderman Manis,
So all the area in blue is the designated employee.
It
I
will
know
be,
that I've
right.
heard them talk about it in the middle, but I see two blue areas like behind micros.
Yes, back here behind Bed Bath & Beyond and behind the Micro Center
Okay.
and Five Below. Yes.
And I would, again, Ellen, just for clarification, I think I'm correct on this. I know Target owns their building, but they also own their parking field as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Again, DDR has control over basically the rest of the lot and the rest of the buildings. I will say this too: the weekend before Christmas. I can't remember which day I was there, but you know, and again, that's why I don't think it's fair to use the peak of the shopping season as a comparison of when you're overflow parking, because there were people parked in the area that Alderwoman Manister just pointed out. And again, I think the reason it's important that we have our sidewalk project that goes through there is because there's no way to get back there at this point except for to walk in the street to get to that parking. But with the Rose Avenue sidewalk project, that sidewalk will be carried through all the way into the promenade.
The sidewalk will come along the side that Five Below is on, and it'll actually include new pedestrian lighting next to Bed Bath & Beyond, so it'll make it safer from a lighting standpoint as well.
Good. So, and those are, again, I think significant improvements to make it easier for people to get back to those spaces. Right. So, are there any other major concerns or issues? I mean, I would like to see this move forward so that they can start their planning process. And then, you know, again, I would include the employee parking field letter in agreement to enforce that. It would give us a little bit more teeth to enforce it as well. But I really don't see that there's any real major issues. So,
how many spots will the new? You say they choose 8 spots with the new space.
That's correct. There 25 spaces will be removed, and then they're adding 17 spaces. So there's a net loss of just 8 spaces.
Okay, and then the employee parking behind Five Below and Bed Bath & Beyond, and then next to Petco, how many spaces? Is anyone actually parking in those now? I mean, do they
Not
Petco, yes.
Yeah, not behind the Micro Center or the Five Below, but
I really don't like that being the employee parking because that's where I always park when I go there.
So how?
But you'll have better spaces now, closer to the store.
How many spaces will actually putting people in there? How many spaces will that free up?
For those 3 locations?
What? Just Five Below then, and
61 spaces.
Okay.
See, it really isn't. I guess the issue is the employees are already parking there. There aren't what it is by designating. What you're not going to have is people parking at the front door of Trader Joe's and then be working there. So they're going to free up the closer spaces to the stores. It's really the same amount of people parking there. It's the same amount of patrons. It's just that we're going to designate the area that the employees can actually park in.
The traffic engineer, Lee, can talk about his parking study in more detail, but there are, based on their analysis they did of the parking reduction request, like approximately 500 excess spaces in the center without relocating employee parking. But the designated employee parking spaces that are shown in this plan are 386 spaces. So even if a portion of those are being utilized by employees correctly, it's a huge benefit.
I have a question. When they first built the promenade, and maybe it was hearsay, but the spaces were very narrow. They were very small, and the spaces were very narrow, and when didn't they, and I don't know for certain, I'm just asking, didn't they add additional parking or lose some parking spaces because they repaved and they repainted the spots to make the spaces larger?
Yes, that's correct. When Target came through in 2007 for their site plan approval, that was one thing that the Planning and Zoning Commission asked them to do, and I don't recall offhand the exact number of spaces that were lost, but the compact car spaces were replaced with regular size spaces, and even with that net loss of parking spaces, P&Z at the time felt that it was more beneficial to have the spaces be the standard size. So that has been changed.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the concern.
That's okay. Just to clarify so you understand that, what they removed were compact spaces and made them the same size as the other spaces that are there. So they did lose spaces because they widened the compact, but they didn't do the entire parking field.
It was just, I believe, one parking row.
Right.
Because it seemed like they were, it's just me. I have a big SUV, and I was always like, I cannot park here. It's just, I would be like, and then you couldn't get out of your door if you and it seemed like the majority of the spots were very small, and then they widened them, and it was so much nicer. Right. So,
but those are the size
I'm-
of the rest of the parking field. And we do still get complaints that the spaces are small. But just as another observation, when I was at Target just recently, what I saw in the evening was, you had people they weren't pulling forward all the way. And so when somebody blocks an aisle or that kind of thing because they got 2 more feet to pull forward, but they don't do that. But again, I don't think it's fair to compare this during the peak shopping season with the everyday use of the center. Again, I think it's very critical that they start their planning. I can tell you with one of the stores that wants to expand, the timing of that is very, very important. As they move forward into next year, because we're talking 3-6 months in advance. So, Alderman Saunders.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I understand, I don't think we should wrongfully delay developers or make it an arduous process to get through planning and zoning and the Board of Aldermen, but we have to live with this for a long time and the repercussions, and there's been a lot of discussion, and this came from planning and zoning, I believe, with the 5-3 vote. I mean, it wasn't a unanimous vote to move it here, and the options given back at planning and zoning were whether it should be fast-tracked through to here or held over till the January meeting. And my concern, too, is I haven't seen I can see the parking up there, the employee parking, but the letter and that. But I think coming forward November and then only waiting in January, and we do have a second meeting, that January 29th, even though they've now canceled I think they're delaying the closed session, or maybe it's still at that time. But before that, we have the fire truck in open session, hopefully to work on that proposal. So we do have a second meeting in January. But for me personally, if we want to decide it today, I'd like to have all of the final drafts of all of the documents. But if we want to move along, I have questions on the study, the traffic study then. So who is that? Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, Lee, if you could.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Aldermen, and persons, I should say. My name is Lee Cannon. I'm a traffic engineer with Crawford Bunty Braemeier. And just to clarify, I am a third-party subconsultant hired by the city for on-call services. And then the developer evidently picks up the tab to reimburse the city for those costs as part of the process. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Just in general terms, we were asked to do a parking sufficiency study to decide whether or not there was enough parking on the site to accommodate the proposal. As a follow-up to that, based on planning and zoning meeting, we were asked to look at some traffic circulation issues related to the perceived tightness, if you will, of traffic flowing through the parking lot. Overall, as Ellen mentioned, the center has about 500 empty parking spaces. Just to put that in perspective, that's enough probably to accommodate the Home Depot over on Hanley. It's parking field. One thing that is important to keep in mind is those spaces may not necessarily be exactly where all the people want to park, which is close to the front door. And there are some obvious constraints. Any day of the week that you go out, you'll notice that the two businesses with the heaviest parking needs are Trader Joe's and Target, and they tend to overlap in the middle. And so that area in between those two, if you drew a straight line from front door to front door, seems to be the heaviest parked area. We did recommend in our study an employee parking plan. The one thing I'd like to mention is it would be a very arduous process and maybe impossible to define an employee parking plan by the board. What we were really looking at is to set a structure, a framework, and let DDR propose something and then have the city staff approve it. And that structure would be, where generally are those spaces going to be? How are you going to enforce it? When is it going to be enforced? How are you going to notify the employees how are you going to clearly demonstrate where those spaces are. Basically, the framework of that, and then let them figure it out, because it's really affecting their businesses, their tenants the most. It's to everybody's benefit, tenants, owner, patrons, that we get those employees out of the prime spaces and off to the side, where there is plenty of parking. And with respect to the traffic circulation, we generally recommend it against wholesale changes because, for instance, making all the parking spaces 6 inches wider or making the aisles a foot wider, all those types of things on a wholesale basis across the parking lot would require massive changes to the parking and the curbs and the lighting standards and possibly even the drainage, those types of things. It could become quite complex and costly. So what we looked at was, are there spot improvements where there's a specific issue where we can address a specific problem and then recommend solution to fix it? And we provided a supplemental memo, which basically was talking about more pedestrian issues, constructing the sidewalk on the east side of the main entrance, providing accessible marked pedestrian crossings where sidewalks cross main aisles, and then also to address the door locations on the new buildings and how they cross the aisle in front of that new rebuilt space. I'd be happy to answer your questions if you have specific ones.
The study that was conducted, there was a weekday and a Saturday. Was there only one day?
That's correct.
And what day do you know specifically that was?
I can look.
Is it common to do a study just based on one day?
Yes, ma'am. Generally, what we find is that the parking generally is about the same from day to day, but we have correction factors. And then we also looked at, in the study, the correction factor to what the holiday peak season would be. And so we have industry standard publications, which we refer to for data for shopping centers and the land uses, that tell us what the average parking might be versus the parking, say, in November versus, say, the parking in December. So let me look and see if I can tell you offhand when our parking study was completed.
And were the prior studies that were done on this lot, were they just specifically one weekday and one weekend day?
Yes. And generally, what we'll do is we'll collect data in the field, for a day, and then we'll compare it to what we would expect or what the code says, and we can generally see if we're in an appropriate level. The parking study was completed, I believe, in September of 2012.
That's correct.
Yes, the counts. I don't have the date in front of me of the counts, but that's the month, which is actually higher than average, but not peak.
Yeah, because actually that's one of the busiest seasons for Target, August and September, with college students coming back, especially on the weekends.
And what weekday do you choose? Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday?
We generally don't do Mondays and Fridays. We generally would do a Tuesday, Wednesday, or a Thursday.
And why not Mondays or Fridays?
Mondays are usually a little slow versus average, and Fridays are usually a little high versus typical. So we like to pick a date that's sort of an average date. And what you'll find, though, with a shopping center, the weekday information is basically irrelevant. Because the Saturday is going to control it. The volumes were 40% occupied on the weekday at the peak, 62% on Saturday. So basically, we didn't even bother really to utilize that data as control.
The weekday.
The weekday. That's correct.
Okay. And I mean, that's the same, like, if, depending on the weekday you pick, there's no anomaly for that particular day, like, for instance, a bowl game or something where people aren't, or you know how a lot of times a swift change in the weather, everybody will be out working on the lawn. That's why I thought there would be multiple days to get a better average.
You mean a football bowl game? No, it's
one I'm kind of hoping to.
7-0 Alabama, right?
14. Roll Tide.
I'm a Tennessee man myself, so I'll refrain from.
But do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Definitely. We have correction factors for day of the week, month of the year, and we look at all those types of things. The information that we took was what I would consider to be typical. When we applied a holiday factor to it, we still had plenty of parking. We're still going to have a perceived lack of parking between Target and Trader Joe's. And the key to that, I think we would all be surprised at exactly how many employees are at this center at any given time. Those blue areas on that map that was up before for DDR's self-imposed parking arrangement for employees was, I think, 384, is almost 400 spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could get 400 folks out of the prime parking area, you would open up, a lot more convenient parking for patrons.
can you explain this? Is this the auto turn study? Because I know at the
Yes, it
meeting,
is.
Chairman Geppert had asked
Yes.
about a truck making a hard left
Right.
turn.
So the area, does somebody have a site plan handy over here? I'm going to move.
Need to pick up the microphone, Lee.
Okay, so the area, right here on the plan is currently has more parking right through this space. So that when a truck comes behind these buildings on the east bay, they can make a right-hand turn and there's more pavement for them to make that turn.
Okay.
With taking that pavement away and shrinking this area where there's a corner and shrinking this area, there was a question as to whether or not a truck could make a turn through there. And might I borrow your drawing?
Yep.
For the display?
If I can look at yours.
Thank you.
That's fine. Thanks.
So what we show here is a depiction of a truck, and it's a bit difficult to see, but the truck is shown here following a pathway, making a right turn here and a right turn here, and the auto turn software, and this was completed by someone else, but we do it in our office as well, illustrates the wheel paths, which need to stay on pavement, and the overhangs, which need to make sure that you don't have something like a light post or a building for them to run, that they would run into. So this illustrates that the wheel paths and the overhangs can be accommodated on the site plan.
Now, what is the one where it's cutting off the little gray corner there?
If you could point. Yes. Right. This grade area is, I believe, the old pavement being cut out and new pavement being put in. But this line right here is the new curb. So the darker gray and the white is all just asphalt, and there'll be a pavement joint there. That's all that line represents.
Okay. And then the second page, is that just?
Yeah. So the individual that was preparing this for the applicant showed the differential between this truck trying to get into the right lane at Eager versus getting into the left lane at Eager, and just showing, because that truck has to make a specified path back in this area to be able to hit that lane. So he's just showing that he could make both those movements within that median area.
He's very close to the parking, right? Is he like really close to the parking, making that into the left?
He is, but an automobile could do that as well.
Okay.
So as long as he's not in the stall, this would be an acceptable design.
And most of those delivery trucks are not in operating tent.
That's a good point. I should say this is a WB50, which is a 50-foot wheelbase semi. So this is probably more like a worst-case scenario. So all the box trucks, those would be a 30-foot wheelbase, much smaller, like a FedEx truck or a produce truck, and those kinds of things are usually smaller. And they would be able to much more easily navigate a path. So we've shown a large, we didn't. This shows a large truck, and the smaller trucks would be able to be accommodated.
Okay, and a fire truck.
A fire truck will go where it needs to go. You can ask the fire chief if he's happy with the plan, and if need be, there may he can answer that question. But generally, his ladder. Do you have a ladder?
No.
Okay, ladders would be articulated similar to this, or slightly different. I don't know the largest truck that Brentwood has, but that would be a question for him.
But if they need a ladder, I can, correct me if I'm wrong, you wouldn't be taking that to the back of the building with a fire.
No, it's unlikely we'd be putting the ladder truck on the backside of the building.
Right.
No.
So, are you comfortable with that as far
That's
as?
the first time I've seen it without looking at it. I'm assuming that we should be able to, based on the fact that you get a 50-foot box truck or a tractor trailer back there, we should be able to get a pumper back there.
A 30-foot wheelbase box truck and a 50-foot wheelbase semi.
Yeah, if you could get that back there, we get the truck back there.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Lay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ellen, if I may, your suggestion is to incorporate the letter of the 17th into this program with the intention of withholding building permits till the agreements can be demonstrated by the owners.
Well, it was just if there were any proposed changes that the Board of Aldermen had. And actually, I did refer back to Bola's city administrator's report, and hard copies of both the letter and the employee parking site plan were placed in mailboxes on December 21st. So we can resend those to make sure everyone has them, but they were sent previously.
I'm Alderman.
But
Mr.
does
Cannon?
anyone have a copy of that?
But I can actually go print out copies very quickly right now if you'd like. And distribute them.
I'll defer, obviously, to your judgment on how you wish to do this, but I would like to throw out a thought. And the reason that we're suggesting, as a traffic engineer, that the board set the condition that there be a plan, that the city administrator approve the plan, is if a specific, well-defined plan goes in your ordinance, then if they want to tweak it, over time to make it better as they see fit, then they'll have to come back to get it fixed, if you will. I would suggest that, as one option, that you would require a plan that has a map, that has statements as to where the designated spaces are, how they're designated, when the plan gets rolled out, how do they coordinate with employees, and what's the monitoring, and what's the schedule for reminder, or that has those elements.
Which is what we have, right.
Yeah, so that cities, if they ever say, well, we shouldn't really do the 10 here, and we ought to move those 10 over there, that they don't have to come back for approvals, that they can go to the staff and ask, and if the staff thinks it's a good idea, or if the staff needs to get you involved, then they could.
Or if tenants change in that,
Tenants
right.
change.
And then you can make those adjustments, right?
Yes, sir. Because Micro Center going in where a furniture store would have made a big change in where
Sure.
you would have wanted those designated stalls.
Right. Furniture store has 8 employees, Micro Center has 40.
Exactly.
Okay, any other questions? Alderwoman Saunders?
So I know we've addressed like parking spaces and availability, but the other issue with this, and I think the bigger one, and was addressed by some of the representatives on P&Z, is the congestion, just trying to navigate between the aisles. And two, again, it's not dressed as safety and fire and getting trucks and ambulances through, but I've heard all along that this project, is so congested and they won't stripe it the same in the future. And then all of a sudden, we're going to add square footage to it. And I can understand, from the developer, if they still think, anyone would want to be located in this center. The location is phenomenal. But again, we'll live with all the repercussions and all the traffic, and we still don't even have the Drury traffic yet. And all the overflow from this, and to put more in, and I know one of the gentlemen on P&Z had suggested, having it angled spots, one direction, which would make it easier to get around in this, to navigate this parking lot. But again, you were saying it's just cost prohibitive.
Well, I guess there's a lot of issues there. Number one, I think if you asked most retailers minus grocers, I think the angled parking is sort of out of fashion.
Okay.
From a business perspective, although there are benefits and there's also drawbacks to that. One of the things that we were talking about is wholesale changes, just redoing the entire parking lot. If you redo the entire parking lot to make the dimensions of the aisles wider and the stalls wider, et cetera, that's going to reduce the number of stalls. Now, they do have stalls to give, but it will reduce the number of premium spots closest to the door. So that'll actually work against the number of stalls issue. If there's specific issues where you can spot a problem and say, this is an issue and this needs to be fixed. For instance, the pedestrian connection to Eager Road. We've asked specifically for that. And there may be others that are issues for individuals, and we could discuss those. But one of the things that we looked at was Ellen, Ms. Rachkov, with the city staff, looked for pedestrian crash data from the city police, and there were no injuries or fatalities reported to the city for pedestrians at the promenade over the last, we checked?
4 years. It was 4.
So
do we have vehicular?
Excuse me?
Do we have vehicular accidents?
The reason that I mentioned, I'll get to that in just 1 second. The reason I mentioned the pedestrians is because if somebody gets hurt, then the police and the emergency responders will go. If there's a fender bender and they get reported to the police, sometimes the police might write a report and sometimes they might not, and then depending on the situation. And then it is private property, and then not all those fender benders and door dings and things like that get reported. There were reports for property damage only, but again, no injury on the site. And that's really what I focus on. Is it bad enough that people get hurt? We don't have any more information about the property damage only, the PDO incidents that were reported.
Another key thing, Lee, and again, going back to the original planning and taking this through the process was the fact that at that time the city required that they make access into Hanley Industrial Court for that center, in that we didn't have the Deerbergs roadway into Hanley Industrial Court, so we had to keep that open for basically cut-through traffic getting into Hanley Industrial Court. Again, in the design, it might feel cramped at times, but I think partially that is by design, because that helps protect the pedestrians, because it makes people move slower through the center.
Yeah,
that's why we have a stop sign at every one of the entrances going through there, is really, that's a safety thing. And one of the reasons is to slow the traffic down going through there at those peak hours, so that pedestrians don't have a problem going from the stores to the parking field. So these are all things that we talked about a long time ago. So.
That's exactly where I was headed with the fact that the layout, the dimensions meet typical standards. They're on the low end, so they're not excessive, but they do meet. So there's no violation of typical engineering layouts and such there on the site. Also to Mayor Kelly's point, sort of the cramped and compactness of the site slows people down by design. So if we were to open up the aisleways and make them wider, it's possible that people would move faster, especially along the longer runs, the straighter, longer runs, even the locations where there's stop signs. But in general terms, it would be extraordinarily expensive to redesign the entire parking lot, which was originally approved by the city when they started the process 15 years ago. And quite honestly, I don't know that if we look at this from the perspective of impact, they're building 10,000 square feet, how much should they be required to spend to fix the remainder of the site? So I look at it as if they're not creating additional problems, then they shouldn't. Then I don't have solutions unless asked to fix specific concerns. And where they are creating potential concerns, like the auto turn, we asked them to give us the information. We looked at it, and we think that that particular issue is addressed.
Alderman Leahy.
If I may, for clarification purposes, Your Honor, Ellen, I'll ask you, this is a Chapter 25 ordinance that's being put in. If this board wished to vote this down, it would have to be passed by a supermajority.
No, because it's site plan approval, it's not supermajority, just simple majority.
Simple majority, okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to Bill 5723, and that the bill be amended to incorporate the December 19th letter as it addresses parking and employee parking into the ordinance.
And the map.
And the attached map that they give to reference it.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Does everybody understand? That's to add the, which is the agreement by the developer or the owners of the property and the management company to address those employee parking issues.
Second reading.
We haven't, this is just to add this to the ordinance. We have to actually have a motion to have a second reading if we're going to do that. So this is just to add these to the ordinance.
This letter and the map
Right.
that they gave us, that they just handed out, to
Okay.
incorporate those in.
We had a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Saunders.
Yes.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Okay.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that we consider, the board consider having a second reading this evening on Bill 5723.
I'll second that as well.
Okay. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
Yeah, I could have some discussion.
Okay, I asked it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't,
sorry.
It kind of came to me a little late. Do you think if we just think that we're going to go with the second reading, that we should maybe hear from the public now? I mean, that's part of the reason of a staggered. Is that you?
Okay.
I think they could have spoken at public input before this time if they're sufficiently motivated.
Okay.
Yeah, I just haven't heard any major issues, so.
Got more work
Okay.
on chickens.
Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
No.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy.
Yes.
Alderman Tui.
Yes.
Alderman Robertson.
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Okay.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to make, I'm sorry,
Second
we'd
reading.
have to have, make a request that we do that second reading now.
Thank you. Second reading, please.
Second reading, bill number 5273 by title only.
5723, sorry.
5723 by title only. An ordinance granting approval of a site development plan for a 20,000 square foot addition to a portion of the property numbered 1 Brentwood Promenade Court, which permits under the provisions of Chapter 25 of the Brentwood City Code the modification of that site, providing the conditions of such development, providing for the enforcement of this ordinance, and establishing the effective date of this ordinance.
Okay.
Now, if I can go back to an earlier question to Ellen, if I may.
Yes.
With the letter and the parking plan suggested in this, you had made the mention that staff would consider withholding building permits till the property owner had a chance to get all of the tenants on board with this process. And did I misunderstand what
They
you
don't.
said?
What I was saying was if the Board of Aldermen had felt like additional points needed to be made in the letter or any changes to the site plan, that could be a condition of approval that building permits are withheld pending that, but not pending them actually implementing the plan.
Okay,
Right.
so as long as we've got the changes into this ordinance at present, staff and the developer can proceed if this board votes to approve the ordinance this evening.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
And this would be binding.
Yes.
yeah,
So
okay.
enforceable by staff.
Right.
Or the city.
At
Okay.
this time, Your Honor, I'll make the motion to perfect Bill 5723 as amended into ordinance form.
Okay. And is there a second?
I guess I'll second that one too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on a roll.
We had a first and second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderwoman Saunders.
No.
Alderwoman Manister.
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Tui,
Yes.
Alderman Robertson,
Yes.
Alderman Nguyen,
Yes.
Alderman Harper.
Yes.
Bill number 5723 is now ordinance number 4398.
Thank you. Next item, item 9, accounts against the city. Alderman
Yes.
Kramer's not present, but the warrant list is before you. Any questions?
I don't.
Do you have a motion to approve the warrant list?
Your Honor, to motion to approve the warrant list in the total of $26,994.71 as submitted.
Second? Second. Any questions? Alderman Saunders?
The Meridian I see is another 4,000 this month, or just for the month of November. It was 3,500 or 3,700 October. Can I request that at the next meeting, we get an update in closed session on what's going on with this? Because we're incurring considerable expense here.
I think why it doesn't need to be closed. I mean, they're in that preliminary stage again, so they've been doing depositions that and monitoring the traffic between the developer and the bank with their is what that's for. We will be reimbursed for I think about $9,000 shortly.
A little over $9,000.
A little bit over $9,000 out of the TDD. They set aside a certain amount. The TDD has to every year for extra expenses, and we're requesting that come to us for our legal expenses. So we will be getting $9,000 back shortly.
$9,678.50.
Right.
The remaining balance.
And going forward, each year when they run out of that pool, we can still request it the next year when it's reinstated. So it might take a while to get our money back. Should be able to get some of it or most of it back. So.
I'd just like some
No,
update
no,
as
it's
to
fine.
where we are or where they are with that suit. You know what the attorneys think. You know what I mean, and how long is this? Are we going to continue to incur these?
My understanding, they set a trial date for next December, or this December.
13.
Right.
Oh.
So.
That's- Okay. Well, perhaps you know.
Oh, okay.
I just asking for some update, even some kind of
Sure,
written memo
we can do
from
that.
Thompson and Coburn.
Try to summarize that a little bit. Do we have a second to approve the warrant list? Second. I'm sorry. All in favor to approve the warrant list as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next item, reports of committees and department heads. I do not have anything tonight. Public safety. Public Works.
No report, Your Honor.
Thank you. Director of Planning.
Just real quickly, Bola just asked me to mention under the city administrator's report that we did receive word about a park planning grant. The applications are due at the beginning of February. We just received word, and this is something that we'll bring to the Public Works Committee meeting this Wednesday, and hopefully back to the Board of Aldermen then by the end of the month of January. It's a grant to reimburse the city for costs of doing some park planning.
I think it's up to $5,500 to, and then we could use that to update our park master plan.
Right, and that's perhaps something that could even be folded into a future comp plan update process as well, to do in advance some of that park planning, so.
Good. And anything further?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ways and Means, not present. City Attorney?
No report, Your Honor.
City Administrator, I would like to, just for the people who don't know, Bola did have to go home this afternoon. She wasn't feeling well. That's the only reason she wasn't here today. So she had to. Excise Commissioner, nothing. Library?
No report.
Municipal League, nothing. Communications, nothing. Historical Society. Any unfinished business? Any new?
I don't know if this is unfinished, but I spoke with the auditor, Chris Vetter, one of the lead auditor on the state audit, and he told me that the management meeting was postponed or canceled, and that now the intention, just for the audience, that we're going to schedule the management meeting and the Board of Aldermen meeting are going to be the same meeting together. And he did clarify for me that that meeting cannot be an open session, that and Bull also put something in our weekly report, an opinion from when John Danforth was the Attorney General. But there is a section, and I asked him to send me it, but where prior to the official report coming out, when they meet with us, that the state audit's office is entitled to have that in closed session. So I had some residents contact me. That's the reason I'm saying this in here. So he said that it's all in closed session. He warned me, all of that will have to remain in closed session. And that even when we finish with that session, then depending on, availability of auditors and, what we discuss within that meeting, that then it still may be a month before the final report comes out. So I just wanted to.
Right, and again, we're following the state auditor's process. I think it's spelled out on their website what the process is. And I think the rationale behind it is that when they finally bring those, their report to us, is that as a city, as elected officials and as staff, that they have a chance to respond to any of those concerns that may be able to be addressed or answered. And then they come out with their final report, which is then a public record. So this is their process, not ours, and we're abiding by what the schedule that they set. So
at some point, will they come to an open session?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah. After we have the meeting on the 29th, and then we answer or do whatever to any the report. Normally, it's within a few weeks they come back and actually come to a board meeting and make a formal presentation to the public.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured.
Alderman Lay.
If I'm a little confused, you're using the date January 29th for a meeting with the state auditors. But Mrs. Saunders, you mentioned that a meeting was canceled.
No,
are we talking two
different meetings?
The
Right.
staff meeting, what Bola referred to as the management meeting, which was staff that I'd asked at the last meeting for the date, has been canceled. And I had emailed the auditor's office asking if I could just sit in on that meeting. And Mr. Schweik said Chris would call me, and he did today, and he said they've decided to combine that meeting. So it'll be staff and the Board of Aldermen together.
On the 29th?
Right.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Okay. All right. Any new business? Alderman Lay.
Your Honor, I have two issues that I'd like to bring to the Board of Aldermen's request. Boy Scout Troop 361 has a total of 4 young gentlemen who have accomplished earning the rank of Eagle. I would like permission to submit proclamations to the city administrator for each of these scouts and ask that the board recognize them in a February meeting to work with. That's my first issue. The second issue is due to the fact that we are having the closed meeting for the audit on the 29th of January, which is normally the Ward 3 meeting. We have made arrangements to move the Ward 3 meeting for the month of January to Tuesday night, January 22nd at 7 p.m. up here at the council room, and all are invited.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Alderman Saunders.
And I had wanted to see about, assuming availability, that I will move the Ward 1 meeting until the 15th of January, just because we had this meeting tonight and then we're doing Public Works on Wednesday, and it's just kind of a tight schedule.
Okay. Next item 13, here of any matters of public interest upon any person present. If anybody would like to address the board, please come forward and give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Barb Hughes, and I live at 2001 Urban. I'm also the Vice President of the Ladies Auxiliary at Golf Mall, and we are having our G.I. Joe breakfast on Saturday, the 26th of January from 8 to 11. I'd like to invite everyone to come and have a good breakfast, all the aldermen and the residents. That's 8 to 11 on Saturday, January 26th.
Great. Thanks, Barb.
Barb, if I may, your group is also hosting a benefit for a lady that is having an insurance problem with her cancer.
I know nothing.
Vicky got with me this morning.
Vicky Dees?
Yes.
That's at another post, I think.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Not at our post.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody else? Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Second, Your Honor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.